Welcome to Bringing Jesus to a Broken Heart. Today's segment is on policy practice. And according to the Social Work Dictionary, 5th edition, from Robert L. Barker, policy practice reads as follows. In social work, professional efforts to influence the development, enactment, implementation, modification, or assessment of social policies, primarily to ensure social justice and equal access to basic social goods. So I want to introduce two very special guests that have initiated a policy that has actually now been enacted. And online with us today from the studio is Dr. Michael Patchner from Indiana University School of Social Work, and he's also the Dean of Emeritus and a professor. His wife, Dr. Lisa Patchner, holds a master's degree of social work. She also holds a doctorate in public health. So we want to welcome both of you to the show as we will speak about your journey in policymaking. Welcome, both of you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Rose, for having us on.
My first question will be addressed to Michael, and I understand that you did hold a position as Dean of Indiana University. Can you give me a little bit of your highlights there and what it meant for you to hold that position as Dean?
I was Dean of the School of Social Work at Indiana University for 18 years, and I am now Dean Emeritus and Professor at the School of Social Work. And what it meant to me was it was a very rewarding experience. I was able to implement a lot of policy changes, both within the School of Social Work and externally advocating for change. I was privileged to be able to chair 3 commissions for the state. I was appointed by 2 different governors to chair these commissions. And each of those commissions led to policy or legislative changes that affected people.
And Lisa, I understand too, because we were speaking prior to the show, that you also hold a master's degree of social work. And may I ask you the question, why would you feel that policy is an important part of a social work master's program?
Oh my, you have to know the constraints that you're working in when you're practicing social work. If you're working in the area of developmental disabilities or healthcare, you have to be aware of changes in the laws, the regulations. You also need to know who to speak with when you feel that there needs to be a change in policy, whether it be at the federal level or the state level. And these are extremely important. And I think social workers sometimes become very disillusioned when they go out there in the world of work and begin to try to assist consumers, and they can't break through some of these policy issues.
Because I remember when I was in my master's program, we were change makers, right? That was like the buzzword, we're change makers. And I always felt, I remember my first paper when I was writing it was like my first day in my master's program, and one of the professors said, what do you think you need to make a change? And I thought about that and I said, I think you need to have a vision. You need to have a vision of what needs to be changed. That opening question on your first day of your master's program, kind of like stimulated your mind, like where would you want to make a change? And how do social workers make that change? And we think that an individual person could not feel like they have that empowerment to do that. But the two of you are coming on the show about how you can be empowered and the steps in action for the two of you that made this happen, when we talk about the enactment that you pursued. And I believe that was on special needs and guardianship. Is that correct?
Yes, it is. And Michael, thankfully, had a lot of experience at the state level working with legislators. And at the time our adoptive son, Christopher, passed away at almost 31 years of age, he had many special needs. And we were his legal guardians as of age 18. And after he passed away, we wanted some closure and contacted one of the legal advocates who had been working with us on some issues of nursing home care, which affected Christopher prior to his death. And we were told that because we were no longer technically guardians here in the state of Indiana, because Christopher had passed away, she could no longer speak with us. And we thought, this is nuts. We need to try to change this legislation in some way. No parent who has just lost a child and is the legal guardian and wants closure regarding the circumstances of their child's death should be told that an agency could not speak with them because they were no longer considered legal guardians.
And Christopher passed away shortly before his 31st birthday. So for almost 31 years, we were his parent, and then we became his guardian, making decisions for him. But the moment he died, our rights ended as parents, as guardians. We could no longer act on his behalf because he had the guardianship, and it died with him.
That's heartbreaking to hear. And both of you are doctorates, and yet you had the emotional component of that this is your son. Can you share first the emotional piece that you struggled with? And then I think it would be so interesting for the listeners to hear how you took that emotion with your professions and made a change, which really the legacy for your son. Can you share like what steps and action took place?
I mean, when Christopher passed away, that, you grieve and you feel this loss, and then you have agencies saying, we can't talk to you. It's like he died twice trying to deal with getting closure, and that's all we wanted was to get closure on some issues. So we decided that for our sake, but mostly for other people in the same situation, that we were going to try to get this changed. It didn't make sense for guardianship to end when there was business to transact, records to get, and nobody would talk to you because you didn't have any legal standing. So I had worked with a state senator on these commissions, and she was very good with looking at social welfare issues. So Lisa and I set up an appointment and talked with her, and she worked with her aide to look into what existed and what might be done. And through our advocacy and working with her, she introduced a bill. It was Senate Bill 516. And so Lisa and I we were asked to appear before a number of committees and give testimony about our experience. And I'll let Lisa talk about that.
One of the things I think we should just say right at the beginning is that Michael and I really prayed a lot about this. It took a lot of effort, emotional effort on our part to revisit everything that happened around the death of Christopher. But God put the right people in our path. That's all I can say. We met with some advocates, guardianship advocates in the state, who knew about this problem with the law. In fact, they had worked with families who had been legal guardians of adults who had passed away. And because of the guardianship law, the way it was written, they weren't able to get the bodies buried. Bodies were languished in some of the morgues. This had happened across the state in some situations. We didn't have that issue happening to us. I think they had tried to change some of that prior to that. But we worked with people who would support a change in the legislation, ARC of Indiana, and some other groups, make them aware of what had happened, and then we took it step by step.
It took 2 years for us to be able to get this passed into law, 2 legislative sessions, because the first year when we tried, there were a lot of concerns what the ramifications might be. There are times always hidden consequences that people aren't aware of. And so they wanted to go through different avenues and talk to different groups, including the Bar Association and others, to see what kind of legal ramifications might be if this law got changed. And then, so they did their assessment of work, and then the next year, when the bill was introduced again, did come up for a vote, and obviously it passed and became law July the 1st, 2017. And it made a change. It extended guardianship for 60 days beyond the loved one's death.
Which was a temporary period, but an important period to get health records and other records that you would need. And when we testified in front of some of the committees, we always stressed the importance of love of family, and that when you become a guardian of an individual because they cannot take care of their own affairs, that's an important and awesome step. And that by allowing guardians to have more time to obtain records following someone's death, we really were honoring families and their decision-making abilities on behalf of the loved one. And that was important. It was really a very family-centered change that we wanted in the legislation. And people resonated with that concept. And we got support we needed that second year.
Yeah. And we would have liked to have seen guardianship extended beyond 60 days. I mean, at least 6 months or a year, in our opinion. But as policy making goes, you take what you can get. And we were able to get support for 60 days across the board, so we thought that was an important step. It was better than no time at all.
This is amazing. And for anyone that needs to refer to this act, what is it actually entitled?
Well, it was Senate Bill 516 in the state of Indiana, and that's what got passed, and it became law July the 1st, 2017.
That's an awesome accomplishment for both of you, and it seems very like God has really used the two of you through this to be passed so that other parents can now have a resource. So I think that's really commendable for the work that the two of you have done together as a team. I know that I have worked with children with special needs, and I know that it's very hard on the families, and they need a lot of support and a lot of resources. So Lisa, I know as a professional, you really brought a lot into the making of this policy. But I would like to just ask you a few questions, if you can just maybe speak from the heart of a mom. But let's speak to other parents, like other moms right now, Lisa, if you don't mind, and maybe speak to them and how they can find the strength if they are struggling today with a special needs child, and then they may need services and care. What would you say to them about trying to go forward and have the fortitude that the two of you had? Can you comment?
Yeah, certainly. Everything Michael and I did on behalf of Christopher, we sought God. He had multiple issues. We struggled mightily. I am going to tell you, since the day I found out that he had special needs, we couldn't have children, and we adopted him. And I remember going to a neurologist with Christopher. He was 18 months old, and we were told about his diagnosis. And I remember taking my fist to God and yelling and screaming, how could this happen? We couldn't have children, and you give us this beautiful little baby, and he has issues. Little did I realize that this special needs child would change us as individuals. We would be much better professionals, and we would be fantastic human beings because of the innocence of this child and his need for us to fight the battle for him. So I would tell every mother out there, look at the fact that God has given you a gift with this child with special needs. You will be strong. You will be courageous. You will be a model to other parents in ways you can never imagine. And God will direct your path and give you those little victories you need. And the one thing that I remember that a priest told me many years ago, went into this confessional, and I had never seen this priest before, and he said to me, your child may not be able to do things that other children do, but he has already won the battle for eternity. You have a living saint in your midst. Rejoice. And I have always remembered that. And Michael, you have too.
Oh, it touched me profoundly when you told me what the priest said.
And we knew if you've got a living saint in your home, God is not going to ignore the needs of that child. Yes, there will be struggles, mighty struggles. But God will give you the grace and the wisdom to get things solved. You just have to keep trusting in His providence. And we can look back now. We're in our retirement years, or semi-retirement years. And God has not failed us. He has given us new vision for what's important in life. And Christopher was important.
And Christopher represents, right? And speaking about, the struggles and how special and what the priest has said, that speaks about the value of life, that there is no measure of the value. Everyone is valuable, and everyone is a child of God, and everyone has a gift, and everyone is special. There was a reason and a purpose that Christopher came into your life. And actually, it seemed like his legend is going on and in the work that you did. And now we're actually doing a show, right, about this. And if it wasn't for Christopher's life, we wouldn't all be here today having this show. So God knows what He's doing. And He says in His word that He turns everything over for good. So when we look at one another in life and we pass each other on the street and we may not know what someone's going through or someone struggling with, or we see any child with a disability, and to love and to nurture, and what you have done as parents really speaks volumes. And I think that you said it so eloquently, Lisa, to parents today that are in that position, and we know many are, that to keep going, to have the fortitude, and to seek God in all decisions. And which brings me to the very next question, because you advocated and you made changes. So, Mike, I would like to address this question to you in particular because, we're both on the board of the Catholic Social Workers National Association. You hold a position there, and I also understand, because we've done a previous show, that you also had a very intricate part in the formation with Kathleen Neer and Joan Rangel in the formation of our wonderful organization. So when we talk about having social workers join and participate, these are the kinds of things that we can do as social workers. And then when you combine it with faith, miracles happen. Things can, like the scripture says, speak to the mountain and the mountain will move. And you had a mountain to move in that situation. Here, the two of you were parents, and yet you couldn't be participant in the end of life issues with your own child. So the both of you move the mountain by faith. I think that is what we want to try to emulate here. So Mike, in your words, what would you say to any potential student that wants to enter into a social work program to get a master's? Also, to invite them to join our organization. You can see how faith-filled it is, the zeal we have for change and for the God's way of life when it comes to these issues. Would you like to comment?
It's a very secular world, and social work is a profession that fits into the secular world. And as Catholics and Christians who are faith-filled and practicing in agencies in the secular world, you need to have some support. And the Catholic Social Workers National Association is a means of support for one another. Their annual meetings are phenomenal, where people get together of like-mindedness and listen to wonderful presentations by a whole variety of folks on a whole variety of topics. So I would say that if anyone out there who is Catholic or Christian and very much interested in finding support, working with people who have the same kinds of issues in practice and struggle with their faith and how that fits into professional social work practice. Catholic Social Workers National Association is an excellent avenue for them to join and pursue and get involved and be active with.
And I can attest to that because it has been a wonderful journey of combining faith and practice. So I also want to just ditto that, and please come join us. It is a wonderful Christ-filled organization. So in closing, I would like to ask the two of you, because we talk about too, social workers work in advocacy, but we also do other work, one-on-one and direct practice. And we work with clients that are bereaving. And I know that there are times when we have these losses and sometimes things just don't make sense. But that's when our faith comes in and gives us the type of strength and support that is an incredible way to pass through these trials and to really unite the suffering with Christ. Would you mind sharing how the faith has helped you? And Lisa, I'll ask that question to you as a mom. How did your faith help you in the bereavement of your son? Because again, we're speaking to parents that might have lost a child suddenly or from whatever cause. What could you share about the wonderful faith that you have in speaking to parents?
Oh my, I know that someday I will see Christopher, and I know he will be whole in heaven. And the other thing I know is that little saint in heaven is praying for our family continually. I feel such a peace, and I can't begin to describe it. It's just you kind of know everything's okay, and that he is where he is, and that he made our life painful at times. We had many challenges, but his life was important, and we learned so much, and other people learned so much from him. And that's what makes his life, yes, a sacred story, like all of our lives. And I want to just share a very short story about Michael. On a Father's Day, 5 years before Christopher died, Christopher had a grand mal seizure, and he was turning blue. And Michael was getting him ready for church at the time when Christopher collapsed and had this grand mal seizure. And Michael screamed for me to call 911, and I did. And I walked into the bedroom where Christopher was, and I found my husband holding this child in his arms, thanking God for the privilege of being his adoptive father, and asking God, please give me a little more time as his father. What a gift to me and our family. What a gift to see my husband that way. I would just tell all mothers, hang in there. God will provide, and he loves you very much. He would not have given you a special child if he didn't love you as much as he does.
God's ways are not our ways, and we have to trust in God. And when God called Christopher, we weren't ready for him to leave us. And we just have to trust in God that God knows what's best. And we know that Christopher's in heaven, and he's pain-free, and he's happy, and we know that someday we're going to see him again. And in our hearts, that gives us peace. And some people never reconcile that kind of peace. They grieve for years and the rest of their life because of a loss. And I just think, who am I to question God? I have to trust. And I know that God's ways are not my ways. And that someday we'll understand, and we'll have eternity with the Lord.
And Christopher.
And Christopher.
And yes, you will see him again, and we will be in heaven, what God promises us, that we will see our loved ones and we will be together forever. And I want to thank both of you for being on the show. And I also want to highlight, because I feel very strongly about this, so I want to say this, that today with the abortion rate, and we see two parents who have adopted a child, they were called. It was a call by God. It was your assignment, both Lisa and Mike, that you took this assignment on, because that's how special God values our life. And I want to thank both of you that you took the assignment and you said yes. And you also said yes when the assignment was over, and you made peace with your time with Christopher. But that time will not end. That time will be again in heaven. But it also just shows, as we can say this in an open forum, if you're someone who is contemplating an abortion, think about the story that you heard today about a child's life that was preserved and loved in a home. Think about that. And think about how you can give your child, if you cannot keep that child, please give it to a family like Mike and Lisa that took them in with the arms of love, the mercy of God, and give the child the chance of a life. God bless you both, and thank you for being on Bringing Jesus to a Broken Heart. God bless you.